We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
President Ronald Reagan once said, quote, "Christmas can be celebrated in the schoolroom with pine trees, tinsel, and reindeers. But there must be no mention of the man whose birthday is being celebrated. One wonders how a teacher would answer if a student asked why it was called Christmas," end quote. And that appears to be the situation we've arrived at. Television commercials display the trappings of Christmas, endless new movies about Santa Claus, each expressing their own unique message about what the Christmas season represents, and yet hidden among the vagaries, amid the calls for consumerist action, is the purpose of Christmas that must rarely, if ever, be named. When TV executives extol us to love one another at this special time of year, it's hardly ever specified why. Why on Christmas Day of all days? Of course, there's an argument that the spirit of love and giving should be with us at all times. Charles Dickens' character from A Christmas Carol, Ebenezer Scrooge, said as much when, after his long night of spiritual visitations, he declared that he would honor Christmas in his heart and try to keep it all the year. But that brings us back to the original question. What is honoring Christmas? As Calvin and Hobbes cartoonist Bill Watterson noted, quote, "Oh, look, yet another Christmas TV special. How touching to have the meaning of Christmas brought to us by cola, fast food, and beer. Who would have ever guessed that product consumption, popular entertainment, and spirituality would mix so harmoniously?" End quote. And there, ladies and gentlemen, is the lie. It seems that we're being guided from a spiritual experience to a consumerist one, something devoid of genuine emotion and replaced with an almost restless greed for sensation, consumption, and superficiality. But it won't work, not really. No matter how hard the Fourth Estate and identitarian-obsessed politicos try to shield the essence of Christmas from the general population, without Christ, there would be no Christmas. And the spirit of Christmas, these pleas that we should love one another and be generous in our spirits and hearts, they're the very core of the message of Jesus Christ. Welcome to Liberty Nation Radio here on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides, and I wish you the very merriest of Merry Christmases. On today's Christmas special edition, we'll be talking with Liberty Nation's editor-in-chief, Lisa K. Donna, to ask whether Christianity is making a comeback. We'll also be discussing the crusade against Christmas with columnist Sarah Cowgill. Later in the show, we'll be doing a deep dive with economist and author Andrew Moran on what the real cost of Christmas is this year under President Joe Biden's leadership. More dollars from your pocketbook or more turkey on your plate? And we'll be wrapping up with Talking Liberty, examining the hottest and most significant legal escapades of the year and how they impact your rights. I'd like to send a special Christmas greeting to our listeners in Pasco, Washington, on KONA on 610 AM. Merry Christmas, and thank you very much for being here. Remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. Let's get started. The food has been eaten, the gifts exchanged, and the communion of family completed for another year. But what effect did President Joe Biden have on the pocketbook this Christmas? Well, despite numerous social media posts from the Democratic Party explaining just how well off you are thanks to Biden's supply chain issues and rocketing inflation, regular folk aren't quite so convinced. And to help us to get to the bottom line figure, we're joined by economist and author Andrew Moran. Thanks for being here, Andrew. Merry Christmas.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so Andrew, despite the supply chain issues, Santa appears to be on form once again. Nothing can stop him. Why wasn't he impacted?
Well, actually, the 12 days of Christmas, they have been impacted. If you look at the PNC Financial Services Christmas Price Index, everything is up, except I think the seven swans is swinging and the 8 maids of milking. I think those are actually flat, but everything else.
Well, those are in the hospitality sector, of course. Now, to get
partridge in a pear, but actually the partridge in a pear tree, it's up, I think, 18%, and then the 5 gold rings are up, I think, 4.8%. So yeah, so overall, the 12 days of Christmas, they're up. I think last time I saw was 28% overall.
That's not a bad figure to have. Now, Andrew, so what is the final figure here? Not of the 12 days of Christmas, just regular Americans' pocketbooks. What cost more? What cost less?
Yeah, so the inflation number came out, and it showed that it was the annual inflation rate was 6.8%, and then also on December 14th, the producer price index came out, and then also was nearly 10%. So overall, everything is costing more. If you just look at food alone is astronomical right now. Beef and veal up 21%, a carton of eggs up 8%, bananas are up 3.7%, coffee's up 7.5%. The only noticeable declines you'll notice will be potatoes, dishes, and sewing machines. Those are the only things that cost less in November. Everything else skyrocketed dramatically. Electricity, gasoline, men's suits, women's dresses, everything you can think of under the sun, everything you find at a department store or supermarket cost you a whole lot more in November.
Now, I figure everybody's asking this question, but how much of this can be laid at the feet of the current president?
Well, I still contend that even if Trump were president, you would still have rampant inflation. Because he himself, he was approving all similar deficit finance, multi-trillion-dollar spending bills. The Fed was printing trillions. The economy was locked down and then it was opened up. So, but overall, Biden still has still contributed to the inflation. He's also pumping trillions of dollars into the economy. He's creating, this excess flow of capital. And if you look at some of the price pressures, his policies, one could argue, have contributed to this as well. So, for instance, a lot of these meatpacking facilities, they're having a huge backlog. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to clear up this jam by having workers work weekends and evenings. The problem is nobody wants to do that. So what these companies have to do is that they have to jack up wages to attract the talent. Why is nobody taking it? According to a lot of these business surveys, a lot of applicants say they'd rather just stay home and collect money from the government. But now that's dried up, so they have to return to the workforce. But still, considering that there's, I think, 11 million job openings, no one's taking the bait right now.
Okay, so inflation, it's at an almost 40-year high, as you mentioned. And yet we hear from the White House spokespeople and even Jim Cramer himself that the economy has never been better. Now, I find it hard to see that. So should I ignore my own lying eyes and listen to the talking heads?
Well, I don't take much stock into anything Jim Cramer says. I've watched this guy for years, and you watch his program. One day he's saying you got to buy this stock, and the next day he says you got to sell the stock. And then I think it was this past summer he was claiming to be a genius when it came to crypto by claiming, oh yeah, I bought it when it was this low, and then I sold it right before the sell off. So I'm this genius. But show me the receipts, as Scott Cosenza once told me. But no, you should stop believing your own eyes. This is comparable all year long. From the very beginning, everyone in Washington, White House, Fed said inflation wasn't here. Consumers were feeling it. They saw it at the gas pumps. They saw it at the grocery store. They knew what was going on. Biden said was this last summer that his Build Back Better agenda is going to cost taxpayers nothing. Turns out, according to the CBO, it's going to be as much as $3 trillion. So just common sense shows you don't believe any of these people. It reminds me of that line from William F. Buckley when he says he'd rather be ruled by the first 100 people in the Yellow Book than anybody in Washington. And I could see that because all these people, they're the heads of the most powerful institutions in the world, and yet they get everything wrong all the time. I wish I could get paid to get things wrong all the time. That'd be wonderful.
It seems like the dream job, doesn't it? Now, there's the famous political question that always lurches up when elections are due. And surprisingly, just 1 year into Joe Biden's time, this question is already being asked. And it's, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? In this case, are you better off now than you were 10 months ago? Now, let's hypothesize that Joe Biden's asking that question after his 1 year in office. What's the answer?
Well, I think if you're in the high income bracket, of course you're much better off. If you were in the stock market, you've made a lot of money. You've made a killing as long as you didn't sell during the days of bloodbath. But for the low and middle income people, no, they're worse off than they were a year ago, mainly because of the price inflation factor. Their purchasing power is completely deteriorated. All the wage gains they made over last year have been eviscerated because of the higher price inflation. Every single sector, I think it's except leisure and hospitality, all the real wage gains are negative. So nobody's better off than they were a year ago. So overall, no, you can't say that Biden can't ask the question with a straight face and expect a positive answer because it's not going to be a positive answer. Everyone, first year in office, a disaster so far.
Joe Biden, don't ask that question. Andrew Moran, thank you ever so much.
Thank you for having me.
Now don't go anywhere. Later in the show, we're having an end-of-year roundup of all the biggest legal takes of the year and how they affect your rights as Americans. But next up, after this short break, we're going to be asking just how successful is the crusade against Christmas? And will it get better from here on out? Don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Who are we? We are Americans that believe in liberty. We are a project of the nonprofit One Generation Away. We are patriots who apply the founding principles to the issues of today.
And they keep moving the goalposts on us.
We are educators and commentators who love America and the Constitution. Who are we? We are Liberty Nation.